Okay, so welcome to Vibrant Wellness Academy. Holistic intuitive massage, full body massage on our clients, and I'm going to demonstrate both the relaxation sequence and the deep tissue. So we begin by bringing our hands down either side of our client's shoulders and just pushing them back, and then you can do a little pressure down the back. Once you're happy with that, take yourself down to the legs, the feet. Just check the feet, the pillows underneath the arch, giving a nice support for the arch. You can do some pressure points on the feet. Come into a nice warrior stance, so using your body weight. And then you can use the back of the hand, shifting the weight from one leg to the other as you work your way down through the feet. So we're just introducing our touch, relaxing our client. Fingers, thumb, lifting the calf muscle away from the bone. If the calf is, you can't fit your hands around the calf, then just come in with your palms. Sink down in your own body so that you're protecting your back. Your warrior stance, 1, 2, 3. So again, I'm squeezing in and slightly lifting the muscle away from the bone. Coming up around the hip, feel for the greater trochanter. And then you know that you're just going to sink in above that solidity of the bone. So you want to find the softness in the muscles, just above the bone. Close your eyes if you need to really feel a little bit deeper. And then that's a great release on the hip. Maybe a little bit on top of the glute, around the sacrum, and then coming up into the back. So becoming aware of where the spine, the vertebrae are, and then across from you. Start up near the neck, a little pressure away from the spine. So again, you're getting your body weight in behind. Relax your own shoulders. So you're making sure you're going away from the spine, opposite direction, opposite side from where you're standing. Keeping that nice connection with your client. Take it over the other side. You may notice that your client, if they have some tension in the neck and shoulders, so just invite them to take an extra breath. So take a nice deep breath, watching the breath, and then on the exhale, introducing that pressure. And again, we're encouraging releasing the muscle away from the vertebrae, the spine, back down to the sacral area, the upper glutes, and then around by the hip. Palm over palm, nice circles, 1. And I'm sinking above the greater trochanter, sinking in, back down the leg. 1, 2, 3. Calf, 2, 3. So everything so far is on top of the drape. We're going to walk up, so you can get the balance from one hand to the other. So it's like you're walking on your hands. And you're moving from the midline laterally, slightly. Okay. Then we'll invite our client to take 3 deep breaths. Beautiful. Breathing in. You can bring the hands over the ribs to encourage that expansion of breath, encouragement of breath. Breathing in. Feel the abdomen press off the table, rib cage expand, chest expand. Exhaling. Good. Taking the drape into the undies, tucking it under, and then taking it down just to the top of the bum, right by the hips. Spread the oil. And I'm just going to point out something here, a little bit in the back of Pavi's neck. You can see a little line, so I'm just going to drop the face cradle just a little bit more, just to open up a little bit more room on the neck. That's it, so I'm doing it nice and slowly, and just go with me a little bit more. Just see how that is. Yep, shuffle up, good. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Yep. And you should notice a bit more space around the neck. We tilt the face cradle. Okay, and then beginning with 3 effleurages, come into a nice warrior, relax your own shoulders. And become aware of your own breath. Up around the traps, in between the shoulder blades and the spine. No pressure on the spine. Use your body weight to shift down towards the sacral hip area, and then a little bit of pull up. Spin your wrists back up the neck. A little tug at the occiput. Allowing the pressure to deepen with each round. And you can bring it down to the wrist or to the hand, whatever feels most appropriate for your client. Back up the neck, a little tug. And then we'll do half body effleurage, hand on hand. Using the top hand to guide the bottom hand and to create the pressure on that bottom hand. So you're aware of where the spine is. You should be able to feel that on the side of your pinky, the vertebrae. So that's your guide, even if you close your eyes. You're feeling into the muscle fibers and tissue, noticing what you notice, and then switching your body position. Starting at the sacrum, dropping down into that lower back, lumbar, coming up the mid-back, thoracic, and upper back. Cervical, across the shoulders. Keep that movement in your own body. Sink down to really get a bit low. So you really get around the traps with the fingertips. So maybe just start with the fingertips. And then bit by bit, you can start to flatten out the palm, using the top hand to guide. So remember, this is guiding and pressure, the top hand. And the bottom hand is gliding through the muscle fibers, and also keeping the direction, using the spine as a guide, as a landmark. Now maybe a good time just to check in with your client, check on how the pressure is. How's that for you?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good. Awareness of breath, your own breath and the client's breath. If you find the other shoulders come up a little bit, just tug it down a little bit before you come to the other side for half body effleurage. Shifting your own body to get the weight of your own body behind the move as much as you can. A little tug on the shoulder. And aware that your client can feel every nuance of pressure and connection. Or lack thereof. So always being aware of where the spine is. Okay, and then after that one, we're going to come up to the neck. Do a little bit of knuckling around the neck. So using the flat of the fingers. You can use the knuckles, use the flat of the fingers, it depends on the person. If you use the knuckles, just be aware when you're using the knuckles, it's going to be stronger. Might be a little bit of a mixture of both. So you're just going to use your wrists across the traps, up underneath the occiput. So where the connection of the traps to the base of the skull. And just don't overdo it in the one position. So move the hands around a little bit so you cover that area, even if it's just a little move. It was really nice. And once you get a bit more dexterity in your fingers, you can create a bit more circling. And even down in between the shoulders. Once you're happy with that, moving on. So we're going to do some thumb stripping across the shoulders, both sides to begin with. And just to get a sense of where we might want to go a little bit deeper. Some pressure points. So if you want to go deeper, then we'll ask our client. So this is more of a deep tissue when we start going into the pressure point. So take a nice deep breath. And then on the exhale, on my client's exhale, I am adding more pressure. And again, nice deep breath, and exhale. So if in doubt, just watch, see if you can see the breath in your client. Remind them to take the breath. If they're not familiar with that, or until they are. Some people will be more familiar, some people won't. Pavi's quite familiar, quite used to doing her deep breathing. But if it's a new person to massage, or they haven't done any yoga or mindfulness, meditation, then you really may have to speak and help them deepen into that breath, or just to understand that on the inhale, you'll release the pressure. And on the exhale, you're going to add the pressure and get your body weight behind it. And again. And if you can sync your breath up with the person on the table, that works really, really good. And for the person on the table, the kind of experience they're having is they're feeling really your presence with them and attentiveness. So it's quite a beautiful thing to have somebody sync their breath with yours and to be that attentive to your breath. Check the other side as well. So if you were doing thumb on thumb, and say the person said, oh, go deeper, there's some really tight spots, and you're giving it all with your thumbs, just release from using the thumbs, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. We'll use a bit of forearm, a bit of elbow. So you don't want to overwear your thumbs. Use them as minimally as you can. Mix it up. But for relaxation massage, that's fine. Okay, so that's up in the shoulders. Now we're going to take it down to the lower back for a little bit. So Effleurage, make my way down, over the hips, bring the hands up, cross, and then I'm in position over just above the sacral area. So I'm going to drop from the sacrum bone, the top of it, kind of sink in, and then spread out, butterfly wings, and then pull back up, just behind the ilium. Inhale, across that lumbar region, and then you can feel that iliac crest pulling up on the upper glutes. Inhale. Exhale, so about 3 of those. And then moving into the thumb rolls across just dropping off the sacral area. So quite a few pressure points, meridian points around the sacral area. So really nice to include that area. So even though it's quite bony underneath, you're kind of rolling off the bone, then you can go a bit deeper as it comes into the glute. So you're dropping into where the bone meets the glute, rolling off the sacrum. There's different connections. And you'll find again that this is an area that many people hold quite a bit of tightness in. So yeah, you might end up hanging out there a little bit longer, doing a little bit more work, little pull-ups. Okay, and then into figure 8. So hand in hand. Again, the tricky thing with this is to kind of move your own body and get used to moving your own body with it. You can start with small 8s and then come into bigger, medium, and then end up with the full 8s. Go medium again if you like, if you want to make it 5, and come back in to the sacral. Okay, so from there we're going to use the back of the hand and come up on this lumbar region. And you're going to feel if you drop in deeper, you got the quadratus lumborum, which can hold a lot of tension, lower back issues. Depending on the massage and what the person wants, where they have the tightness. But for now, we're just using the back of the hand. And again, I'm aware of where the spine is. So I'm coming up close into that valley. The little dip either side. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to go again the opposite side of the spine from where I'm standing. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky to find this little valley. But I'm going to drop down from the sacrum and just kind of sink my thumb in until I feel like I found it, or you can go up higher and come back down. So whatever way helps you to find it. And then the top thumb heads off into the little valley, followed by the second one. So I can feel the vertebrae, I can feel the bony protrusions of the vertebrae. So even if I close my eyes, it's pretty easy to follow that as long as I can feel on the inside of my thumbs towards me. I can feel that little bony protrusion. So I'm not on top of it, I'm just to the opposite side of it. So the first thumb leads, and then the second thumb can go a bit deeper. You have a sense of, you might find some areas that feel a little bit tight, different muscles, erector spina muscles if you sink down. Just depends. Okay, so we're going to strip from that little valley again away. If you do it more superficially, it's more lymphatic, but if you want to go a little bit deeper, start getting into more of a myofascia release. And just follow what you're feeling under your hands as the tissue yields to your fingers and to a slight bit of your body pressure behind it as you kind of fall forward a little bit. And then we're going to do some pull-ups all the way back up. So to make this an aromatherapy massage, you just add some essential oils in. Put it in the water. You can put it under the nose when you begin, or you can just add it into the oils. Choose a specific oil for your person. But all these moves that I'm sharing so far are very appropriate for an aromatherapy massage. Okay, so then we'll head down the other side and do the same sequence on the other side. Okay, so we'll do our butterfly. So aromatherapy, relaxation, Swedish, all fit into this style of massage so far. And just the pressure points is a little bit more on the deep tissue side. Okay, so we found our way up, back up to the neck. So let's continue with a bit of kneading, a bit of petrissage. Again, if you can find a bit of a rhythm in your body, in your own hips. So over the 7th cervical, many people have quite a lot of tension. So it's nice to give that a little bit of extra attention. You can use your fingers, thumbs either side, and then you can pull up the neck under the occiput, and then with the other hand, pull down. So you can do it slowly first until you find your rhythm. And then once you find your rhythm, you kind of get into a little bit more. Okay, and then a little bit of petrissage on the shoulder. And the other shoulder. And if there's anything that you may have forgotten or missed out, you can just always add it in. As long as your connection is good, your touch and your connection, your client's not going to mind. As long as it feels pretty balanced on both sides. And that you've paid extra attention to those areas that they've mentioned as tight, they're going to be pretty content. Okay. So that's where we would finish off with our 3 effleurages. So I'm going to close that with our 3 effleurages, and then I'm going to go into deeper tissue techniques. So generally most people really enjoy a mixture, and that's what we do at Mountain View Massage, is really adapt our massages for the person on the table. So it's a mixture of nice flowing, relaxing strokes like the effleurage and what we've just done, and deeper tissue strokes, if that's what they're looking for. What's deep for one person can be light for another. What's light for one person can be deep for another. So we're also listening and attentive to how the body's responding to our pressure. And depending on the size of the body, what parts of our body we're going to use. So if you have a very petite person using the forearm, is it necessarily going to be wise? And if you have bigger hands, so you may have to just stick with the hands or whatever you can. If you're a smaller person and you have a bigger person, then to use the forearm is brilliant. At the same time, don't feel just because somebody's a little bit more petite that they can't take pressure either. Usually what it is just, it's because of the bones. There might not be as much muscles, and you just don't want to hit the bones really if somebody's very petite. Okay, so we're going to start with the first. Actually, I'm going to start with, so what I would do if somebody really came in and they were looking for deep tissue, I would do the 3 effleurages just like what I did there. And then I would do the half body effleurage, and I would use my forearm. So I'd come up on the neck. So before we were using hand on hand, but now I'm going to use my forearm. Come over in between the spine, shoulder. I'm very aware of where the spine is. This is why it's so good to do with your hands first and to be aware. This would be more tricky if I had a blindfold. I'd need to use my thumb, I'd need to use something. But for now, I can use my eyesight to follow that line. So just be aware that elbow, if you do it like that, it's going to be quite a different effect than having it at an angle. And then over the hip, just like what we've done, change the body position again and rolling off the sacrum. And this saves the hands, and especially if somebody's looking for deeper tissue. So I'm just slightly changing the angle. I can get around the shoulder. It's usually a juicy part right up there at the top of the scapula. Bring it up. So I'm being quite precise. That's the thing, when you work with your forearms and you have to have a bit more awareness. Take it steady. Because if you poke your elbow into somebody's bones or in the wrong way or too much, then that can be quite uncomfortable for a person. And usually how you'd know that you've really gone too much is, again, the first thing that our person on the table will do is hold their breath. So that's always an indication. If they're breathing comfortably, then we know all is good. But if their breath is a little shallow or maybe held all together, then we want to either remind them to breathe. Sometimes people hold their breath, they don't even realize it. So I often remind people. And they're just used to holding their breath so much in life. When something feels a little more intense. So just being aware of that. Sometimes you just actually have to remind people to breathe. Also be aware, some people think it needs to be painful to have results. So they're just putting up with it. So having a little communication is always helpful. If unsure, just check in with your client. How's the pressure? And sometimes, especially using the forearm and that, you do have to check in because, yeah, just to be sure. Just take a nice deep breath up there. I'm just going to put my elbow in a little bit more on the exhale. Again. Good. Okay, so I wouldn't do both of them together. I would either do that one or I would do the hands, depending on my person, the kind of pressure that they were looking for, but also the kind of pressure that they were responding to the best. Okay, so now I'm going to move it into the shoulder. So I'm taking my person by the elbow, the wrist. So I'm going to ask my person to take a nice deep breath. So breathing in heavy and then taking out on her exhale. Again, if people are used to having lots of massage, it's usually not an issue. People are super relaxed. You may not even need to do that. But for some people who are newer, you might just need to do that. Otherwise, they'll be helping you and holding their arm. So if somebody does that, sometimes I actually go back up and tell the person, take a breath. Again, no helping me this time. Give a little wiggle, just so they're nice and relaxed. And they can feel what it is to let go. For some people, that can be a big ask. So they're not even aware, or they're not used to somebody taking their arm until they do get used to it. Okay, so I'm bringing one hand underneath the deltoid, around the shoulder, getting into the shoulder muscles. And I'm working around those different muscles, especially the rotator cuffs. So in behind the scapula. Just underneath the spine of the scapula. So you'll feel that bony protrusion of the scapula. You're going to go under it. So you got your traps and then under. Infraspinatus and teres minor. Down through the side body. Serratus. In under the shoulder again. If somebody has rotator cuff issues, then I'm going to go very slowly with this one, especially if somebody has restricted movement, and if they've injured it, they'll be reluctant to let it go. So we kind of have to build up that trust. So just taking another deep breath. So I just start to introduce a bit more movement and get them synced up with the breath. Notice if they can keep the breath going as I'm moving the shoulder also. And if I noticed they were holding the breath even with that, I would just bring it back to the basics of the breath. Because what's happening if they hold their breath is they're tightening their muscles. So I'm trying to my aim is to retrain the muscles that they can let go and release. And then once I felt like they could really let go and relax and they felt held and all is well, the breath is nice and relaxed, then I might see about taking the arm out just to see about the mobility for the person. And again, just making sure that they were actually breathing and again, noticing. So just working with them. So that's specifically to rotator cuff. So that's not for everybody. If people didn't have any issue with their shoulder, then we know we can take the arm out. I'm going to hold it with my hand, the elbow. You don't want to lift it too high. So you want to keep it same level as the table. And then I can use my other hand to go down the back, which is a really nice one. And give a stretch. So I'm pulling the hips away and the elbow away from each other. And then pull up through the side body. So you could do the hand or you could use the elbow. It's nice to pull all the way up the arm, even out through the hand and the fingers. Then I've got the elbow so she feels held and supported, and off we go again. So I'm coming up between the cervical vertebrae, scapula, so once I've done that, or if you found that too much to hold that arm, you could always drop it. You could always just drop it in front. That works quite well. Use the hand or use the forearm. Sometimes it can be a bit much to think of what's going on with both hands and arms initially, till you get used to it. So you could do a little stretch into the glute as well. Quite nice. And if you had your person in that position as well, you could bring one into the glute and then the other one. So have a little stretch for the lower back. Bring it all the way up into the shoulders. Slide back in. Or you can just bring it straight down. Kind of like what I already done. Through this side body. Okay, once you're happy with that, so we've done these ones around the shoulder, so that's really nice to get around those, to help relax those muscles. And I'm going to give it, my person's nice and relaxed. So take a nice deep breath, another deep breath. One hand onto the elbow, one hand onto the wrist, taking it behind the back. Now if somebody has tight rotator cuff muscles, you may notice that their hand only goes here. So you could either put a towel underneath the shoulder or a hand, and you can still lift the scapula out. Hopefully you can see that and get in through there. So we're looking to get in under the scapula a bit more. So even if you don't get somebody's hand around, but if you can, then that's all very wonderful. And then, so what I'm doing with this hand, I'm in my warrior, and I'm just sliding it under the shoulder joint. So it's cradling in my palm. Cradling in my palm. And then once I'm there, and my forearm is under her upper arm as well, so that keeps it in place. And then with my palm, I can circle. So you can see I'm wiggling the shoulder blade. And I've lifted it up so I can get in here. And so I'm going in at a bit of an angle. So first it's good to use your fingers, your thumb, especially up at the top. The thumb is really good. So take a nice deep breath. And again. One more. Good, so your fingers and thumb. Again, if you wanted to go a little deeper with your person, you can use your forearm and even getting that elbow to replace the thumb. So again, take a nice deep breath. Or do the other angle. Bring it up from the neck. There's a few different ways to approach it. But in the beginning, I suggest really just getting familiar with it, with your fingers. Often the first thing is afraid that you're going to hurt somebody. So you kind of have to familiarize yourself with the fact that you can sink in underneath that bone to quite a degree. So we do work with the breath though as we go deeper. You do like little pressure points. You could stay on one little point. Most people it's up high on the shoulder blade. But often, yeah, that's where the real tightness is for many people. So if you can get some release through that, you'll have very, very happy clients. Okay, so we'll take the arm down, do a little rub through the hand, and in under, and then over to the other side. So don't worry if there's a little bit of redness. That's all good, lots of blood flow happening. Especially when you do deep tissue, you'll see a little redness, but it usually goes pretty quickly. So again, as I said, if somebody's not used to having their arms moved around, you're going to ask them to take a nice deep breath. Then on the exhale, take it down. If they tend to hold their arm, just tell them, release, let it go, floppy, floppy. If they say, I'm trying to, just remind them there's no try, and relaxation. And then you can see my stance, bent knees, scooping my tailbone to protect my back. And I'm bringing my hand underneath, just circling all those different muscles, especially the deltoid. And then these other rotator cuff muscles around the back of the scapula. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to take it out. Do one with the hands. So it's good to do that as well, just to get a feel of the tissue underneath. Bring it all the way. If you have the room, all the way out to the hands. And then you have the option using the forearm or just keeping to the hands. Make sure not to pull our person's hair. Okay, so I'm grabbing the elbow so my person feels nice and relaxed. Or, as I said, you can drop that shoulder. And when you drop the arm down there, the scapular bone is moved outwards, so you can actually get underneath as well. So if you can't take the person's hand behind, it's a good way to do it as well, is just to drop the arms forward. And you can just do little thumb rolls in behind the shoulder blade. Okay, so another deep breath, go across, or bring the arm behind. A nice deep breath there. Again. One more, yep. The option to bring the forearm as well. And just bring I'm angling the elbow so it's as much as possible dropping in underneath that scapular bone. And so with this hand, I'm maneuvering a little bit at that scapula. So I've got my hand underneath the shoulder girdle. So if I just tip it up, I can tip up, if you can see that bone, I can just tip it up there. So if you take another deep breath, and then I'll tip it up so that I have a bit more space to get under. Again, that can take a little bit to have the coordination to be able to have both hands, have an awareness of what both hands are doing. You can always just put a towel underneath here. That way you don't have to worry so much about this. And then you can just focus on your forearm, getting underneath the scapula. Okay. Okay, so one more thing I want to show on the back is, let me get a bit more oil. Again, this is thinking person that you want to use more forearm, because every time you're just using your fingers, say it's not enough pressure, so they need a bit more pressure. So a good way, a nice way to cover the back is just to slide the forearms in at that lower back. Also, actually, this is, yeah, I do this really when people have sway backs as well. So that dip in the lumbar spine to create more spaciousness, because it's usually compression. So it's usually going to be that compression in the back, and the glutes are often quite tight because they take over the weight bearing, and why these muscles aren't really being activated, they're just kind of sitting there. So that's why things get compressed and they're not actually pumping the blood and flushing out the toxins and that. So we're looking to open up spaciousness, slide in the forearms, and then just pull in opposite directions across the glute. So you could just bring it up and then slide it back down. Or when you start to feel comfortable and you get a little bit more used to it, once you do that stretching, decompression of the lower back, you may find a nice little trigger point through the glute on one side. Hold that, stabilize it while you stretch on the other side. So take a nice deep breath. So I'm going to lengthen through the other forearm. And if you can reach it, you could even go all the way around. Optional. Do that again, nice deep breath. So just being aware of the spine. If you're a bit unsure about the spine, you can turn your arm the other way. It just depends on the person for me. So again, one more. Nice deep breath. So I'm adding pressure here with my elbow. And this one I'm using to push in the opposite direction. So it is opposing directions that you're going with your pressure. So that can take a little bit of coordination and getting used to as well in your own body. So if it's too much, you can just, you could just bit of pressure point with one, then that's kind of where you want it to be. And then with the other hand, you're just focusing on that lengthening. So that may be enough just to begin with. And just do the same on the other side, even up. So this is a bit more remedial as well, especially if you're working with somebody, they've got something specific. Maybe one glute is quite tight and the other one isn't. Sometimes that one side may be tight and it's related to the shoulder. So often it could just work across the body, or when something's happening down here, something else is happening up here. So just kind of look out for that connection. You might just find the right shoulder's tight and the left. And it just depends what the person is doing. For example, mums who are holding their kids on one hip all the time, or just, if you just ask the person what they do, you may begin to be able to put some things together, or they may be able to put some things together of how they're holding their posture. I could even be sitting in the car pretending to lean into one glute rather than the other. So again, up that lumbar region and just pushing out in opposing directions. If you can't reach up high, then you can always just pull it back a little sooner. Even if you just go from the lumbar up into the thoracic, even if that's enough for you, then that's great. Just anything to help with the decompression, anything to create more space. And if you can, get it over the shoulder. So I'm just adding in a bit more of that shoulder. Nice and juicy across the shoulder, elbow, coming back in. Okay, this time I'm going to find myself a little place in that glute. So take a nice deep breath. So for Pavi, I'm coming in quite close to the sacrum. I just find that's where the tighter spots is. For somebody else, it could be a bit up higher on the glutes or just off the sacrum, another area. So it's not always the same for everybody. Okay. One more. And last one. And then, what am I doing? Oh yeah. What did I do before? Oh yeah, this is it. Oh, it looks a bit like a bit of a twist. You just kind of really have to find what works for you. This side feels a bit more like that. And of course on our body as well, we're used to operating perhaps more on the right or the left, so that's also plays its part in how we have to find a way that feels the most balanced for our person, so that we don't go too much. Just find that right amount of pressure. Okay. So I think that's more than enough on the back to cover in one afternoon. So we're going to continue on to the legs. But feel free to mosey on if you like. Okay, and then bringing the drape back up. So yeah, whether you finish on the deep tissue or the relaxation, you want to complete with 3 effleurages. A little stretch on the back diagonally. You can either use your hands or you can use your forearms. And bring it down the legs.